Welcome back to The Different Knock, and is this Mikel Arteta's biggest weakness? In the week since Jurgen Klopp's shock announcement that he will be leaving Liverpool, despite feeling weirdly sad about a big loss to the entertainment value of the league, I find myself feeling very positive about the future. Not only are Arsenal getting back on track in the title race, Mikel watches The Different Knock, obviously. Looking at the crop of teams ready to challenge at the top, Arsenal feel like the team in the very best position to take advantage of the inevitable instability that's been created at Liverpool, undoubtedly City's most consistent challengers. And if, hopefully, Pep is thinking about leaving, I think we're the best placed team to go and consistently challenge once that happens. It's incredibly exciting. So big picture, I'm very happy with the Arteta project. It's incredibly exciting. But there is always room for improvement. And I'd like to explore a potential weakness of Arteta's for your, hopefully, viewing pleasure. There are some in the fanbase who are concerned about an aspect of Mikel's management, his integration of youth or academy players. Some of you, I'm sure, are concerned, some of you, I'm sure, just rolled your eyes, and most of you will be somewhere in between. I'm probably somewhere in between with a slight leaning towards it mattering. I'm about here on that spectrum. What I don't personally agree with, though, is a selection of vocal people on this end of the spectrum. Those that say, it doesn't matter at all, stop waffling, Arsenal fans always need something to complain about, this weird obsession, stop looking for problems, and so on and so on. You've heard them. Because I actually think when you unpack it, there is a lot to be discussed here. So in this video, I'm going to take the 6 most common arguments I hear from people on that side of the spectrum and try and break down why I am where I am on my beautiful graph. Critiquing something doesn't mean you think it's problem number 1, and praising something doesn't mean you don't see the issues. The internet is a hard place for a nuanced debate, but damn it, I will try. Okay, now I'm waffling. Let's go. Youth integration is not important, he just needs to win games. A completely understandable perspective to have. The primary job of a football manager is to win games. Couldn't agree more. But winning football matches doesn't just happen out of thin air. You don't just turn up one day and win the league. It takes years of consistently getting all the other stuff right. Staff and player recruitment, training, club culture, media management, resource management, and so on. So in my opinion, in football discourse, you can't divorce any aspect of the club from the other because it's all connected. What you need to do is decide how much each constituent part matters. Because if it affects the team, it does matter to some degree. The real question we should be asking then is not if it matters, but how much it matters. And for me, it does matter in context. It matters when it comes to club culture and fan connection, fans seeing themselves reflected in the team, a feel-good factor when it comes to the club, keeping a healthy atmosphere of ambition at the club, young players seeing pathways into the first team, keeping those first teamers on their toes, just to name a few cultural factors. And it matters, maybe more, when it comes to use of resources. We'll come to this more later, but you can save yourself literally millions of pounds to be used elsewhere by giving a young person a chance. And these are all parts of getting to the primary goal. It's not a big problem if you isolate it. I agree. Tactics matter more. Transfers matter more. But you can't isolate it, in my opinion, is my point. How much it matters is then the question. What is this weird obsession with youth players? Those of you who rolled your eyes at the beginning are likely to have said this. But in my view, it's not just some weird quirk of the Arsenal fan base. People bring it up, in my opinion, because when you look around, you realise that we are the exception. Mikel Arteta has handed out 7 senior, competitive, first-team debuts to academy graduates in his time as Arsenal manager. Miguel Aziz, Ben Cottrell, Carl Hein, Folarin Balogun, Charlie Patino, Ethan Nwaneri, and Charles Sejo Jr. It's a bit hard to get the raw numbers and you have to piece certain things together from different sources, but by comparison, Jurgen Klopp had handed out 44 academy debuts by January 2022, and by my reckoning has added another 10 to that list with these names since. That's 54 academy debuts since October 2015, making it one for every 56 days of his management tenure. Arteta has one every 150 days. This article from November 2022 was on City's official website, with Guardiola handing out 24 academy debuts since his arrival, and since that day I make it 4 more, with these names bringing it to 28, making it one every 113 days. Going further down the league, an article in The Athletic says David Moyes had given 16 academy debuts up to January of last year, and since then there's been 2 more, in Levi Lang and Callum Marshall, as far as I can tell. So at 18 debuts, Moyes is 3 off, tripling Arteta's numbers, despite arriving just 10 days after Mikel. United have still been handing out debuts despite their managerial woes, Chelsea, Spurs, and so on, but they're harder to compare without consistent managers. There is always context. We've been going through a rebuild, we haven't done particularly well in cup competitions, maybe the players aren't there, which we'll come to, but the "there's been no opportunities" camp are just wrong. Within the last 12 months, off the top of my head, we've had the dead rubber against PSV, where supposedly Ben White is injured and still coming on, the game against Wolves on the final day of last season, where we would have come second regardless of the outcome, the Lens game where we're 5-0 up at home at half-time, and so on. In all of those cases, there is definitely a counter-argument. They weren't ready, wasn't the right time, so-and-so needs minutes, and so on. But in football, there's always reasons to do something, and there's always reasons not to do something. So if we discussed every case, we'd be here all day. My point is we have to look at the wider picture over 4 years. Not to sound like one of those people on Instagram who give out unsolicited dating advice, but if he wanted to, he would. And arguably, some of the debuts he's handed out were forced to some extent. Nwaneri sounds like it was to get him to sign a new deal, and would Balogun have started against Brentford if Albert and Laka were available? And here's my question. What message do these numbers send to the academy? What message do they send to a young player unsure if they'll stay or go? What message does it send to a player thinking about joining Arsenal at academy level? Look at the first team. We have a load of academy graduates. What's the problem? This argument frustrates me because it's not what we're talking about. We're talking about debuts, or in other words, chances. Players whose debut in a proper competition came under Mikel. I actually think the success of this young team has slightly covered up the wider issue. And it's not just a kind of desire to see something new, although new ideas would have been helpful at certain points this season. The main point is this: if you give young players a chance and they do even moderately well, everyone benefits. Not only because they can contribute on the pitch, but I also want to pick up on the use of resource argument from earlier. Let me ask it a different way. How much is an Oscar Bob, Garnacho, Lewis Miley, Jacob Ramsey, Harvey Elliott level talent going for next summer window? Very, very good players, all of them. But are they going to be the world's best players? I don't think so. What they are is good talents who've been given time at their respective clubs and not written off before they even make their debut. And that's the key here: patience and an opportunity. Our young players have been competing with these guys in youth leagues for years before they got their moment. All of them may or may not make it for their clubs, whatever that means. But I guarantee if any of them move next summer, all of them are fetching upwards of £30 million to the right club. We've seen it ourselves. Joe Willock, Alex Iwobi. Players don't have to go on to be first-team regulars for years and years to be considered a success. You don't get Phil Foden or Bukayo Saka every season. I'm not asking for that. But when the situation is managed correctly, you can create value for your club, and that can only come with opportunities. What is the opportunity cost of a Cedric, an El Neni, a Pablo Mari, nice guys as they are, I'm sure, to young people who, on our balance sheets, are pure profit at a time when we're struggling with the profit and sustainability rules? The players clearly aren't good enough. I put this after the last one because it is related. If you don't think we have, given time and an opportunity, and right use of the loan market as well, which I don't think we always do, and Elliott, Ramsey, Bob level talent in our academy who could have emerged over the last 4 years, that's fine. But then I'd suggest we have a different issue. The academy aren't producing enough good players. You might think the talent's there, you might not. But if you don't, then we do have another problem. I happen to think we do have players at that level if given the time. The likes of Norton Cuffy, Walters, Kozio Dubry, Patino, and so on. But if you don't, and you think our players aren't good enough, that's fine. But there's a different issue. In essence, it's not something we can just ignore, in my view. Look at our current crop of youth players. Who's ready? There's a talent gap, that's why. This is a good argument, to be fair, if you're only speaking about right now. Supposedly, the best talents in our academy right now, Miles Lewis-Skelly and Ethan Nwaneri, are still very young. I'm not particularly talking about them, or indeed anyone specifically. I'm looking at the big picture of the 4 years. But I come back to it. How do we know players aren't good enough if there's no opportunities? One of the counter arguments to that is that 10 minutes at the wrong time can destroy a player. Maybe that's true, but then I'd say if 10 minutes in a dead rubber game where a young player gives a few balls away completely wrecks his career, then one of two things are true. Either the academy hasn't sufficiently prepared these young men for the position they're going to be put in, which is a problem, or the player isn't right for the competitive level that we need them at. And if the second one's true, then let's be absolutely clear. If I magically got some football ability and aged 18 made my debut for Arsenal, yeah, I'd be all over the place. But I haven't been in a football environment since age 7 or whatever it is, preparing for that moment. But if someone has and they're crushed by that experience, my question would be, were they right for us in the first place? It's no comment on them as an individual. As I say, I couldn't do it. I wouldn't be ready. But that's not the question I'm asking. Are they right for us if that destroys their confidence? Arsenal fans always need something to complain about. This old chestnut. I want to come back to what I said at the beginning. You can't divorce aspects of the club as and when it suits. Everything is connected. And if you think those who bring this up are just looking for problems, rather than critiquing the club out of a love and a desire for it to be better in any way it can be, then that's fair, but I only hope you believe me when I say these are genuinely held beliefs. Go and watch the instant reaction on the Canon podcast to that PSV game, or my recent conversation with Tom on the Gooner Talk. This is something I do think about, because I want the same thing as you, hopefully, Arsenal to be better. And by the way, it's okay for Mikel to not have mastered an aspect of management. It really is okay. He's so good in so many other ways. And I think from what I hear, the club are aware that this is an issue too. For For me, it's something that Mikel can improve upon, but it's not the be-all and end-all of football management. I don't agree it's not a problem, but I also won't be withholding my Arsenal membership until it's fixed. We can have shades of grey, as hard as it feels in these spaces sometimes. Moving forward, I'd love to see us maximise a notoriously tricky loan market with young players. I'd like to see us give more opportunities, and I'd like to feel a greater connection between Hale End and the first team. Is it his biggest weakness? That's up to you to decide. I don't think it is, but maybe that depends on how much you think it matters. Let me know down in the comments. If you like The Different Knock, you can support us on Patreon monthly, or you can buy us a coffee.